It was a rainy night, so I decided to come up to the Tip Top Grill up here in Bluff Park in Hoover, Alabama, a suburb of Birmingham, Alabama. And the Tip Top Grill is no longer open. Unfortunately, they had really good food for cheap. It was always good to come up here and grab like a quick lunch. You could get like a hamburger, fries, and Coke for under $6. As recently as 2022. I think they closed last year. It was 2022. That's when they closed. And just get a basic meal and sit out here on the porch that they had and just look out at the Great Jones Valley. And they closed last year. They gave almost no notice. I think they announced it on their Facebook page, and then within a day they were closed here in Bluff Park. But you can come up and still see the views, and that's what I decided to do tonight. Because it was just like raining something fierce earlier tonight, just a late afternoon thunderstorm in late July. And that's really the best excuse to come up here. You just know that you're going to get a great view leading into a great sunset. That's why I decided to come up here to the Tip Top Grill. Yeah, it's really a mystery why it closed. Nobody knows why. I guess they just couldn't afford the rent anymore or whatever. I don't know. But this is Mike Booty. This is the Midnight Citizen Show. I'm your host, Mike Booty. Welcome in. I don't know, 4th, 5th, 6th, I don't know how many shows in a row now I've done where I am mobile, just out and about tonight. Just always moving these days, never being able to sit down long enough to record a classic studio show in the comforts of my own Midnight Citizen studio, so I have to just do it whenever I can, and tonight I decided to, if I'm going to be mobile, I might as well come to kind of cool locations around Birmingham, my home city. And I was like, oh, it's thundering. What better night, what better time to come up to the Tip Top Grill than right now and record a show. So I hope you're all doing well this evening. Yeah, Bluff Park is just a few minutes away from my friend Jason's house. I'm going to go over there for the second Friday night in a row to hang out with some friends that I haven't seen in a while. We're going to see Adam and Alex. Adam is in from Los Angeles. Alex lives in town, but he's so busy and he lives kind of so far out there that I never really get to see him that much. So I'm excited about seeing. And both of them are avid listeners to the Midnight Citizen Show. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to be gathering with about half of my fan base tonight. They won a sweepstakes. They won a contest to hang out with yours truly. And so tonight I'm going to be going and hanging out with them, even though they are friends. It's strictly unprofessional, right? So, yeah, but a lot of fun stuff going on. You may hear occasionally in the car behind me, the car that I'm leaning on right now, are the Bassetts, Izzy and Zoe. And they are very not used to what's going on right now. Sitting in the car while I sit out here and record a podcast. They're really not used to going on car rides at all. That's why they're so howly. Usually the Bassetts are at home on Friday night. And really any night. It's very difficult to take them out. They just get very anxious. And well, if you've ever owned a Basset hound, you know. But tonight, though, since it was storming, one of them, Zoe in particular, gets incredibly anxious around thunderstorms. And so I just didn't want to leave her at the house alone tonight while I went out and gallivanted all across town. And came up to the Tip Top Grill. Normally their mother, Jessica, is at home, but right now she's in Savannah, Georgia. She's spending the weekend with her mother, leaving me all alone. So, yeah, I had to kind of take the Bassets. I just didn't want them to sit all night alone in their kennel. So, yeah. So yeah, let's get the show started with some topics. I don't know. Um, I was thinking recently. I was watching this show on HBO that takes place in the 1980s, and there's a moment in the show where one of the characters is watching the news, and he's featured on the news as a potential suspect in the death of his wife. And I wasn't really paying attention to the story. I was just looking at the television. It was this big console television, this floor model. You know what I'm talking about? This console television that's just set on the floor. Unlike today, where we might have TVs mounted to the wall, or in entertainment centers proper, this console television was just on the floor. This big old cathode ray television tube, right? And sitting there in this 1980s living room, and I'm kind of thinking to myself, I haven't thought about those in years. I remember having those, one of those actually. That was the first television I ever had, and I remember it very clearly being in my parents' house. They probably got it maybe the year I was born, maybe the year before I was born, 1981, 1982, somewhere around there. But they had this television set all the way up until the year 2001 or 2002, I think. And I remember getting my very first DVD player and connecting the DVD player to it via a coax cable. And watching like the first, I think I was watching The Matrix on that thing on DVD, on this cathode ray television tube that I had since I was born. And if you're my age or if you're older than me, you remember these very well. Completely different than the televisions that we have now that are just completely flat. A lot of people are getting these flat televisions now, and they're putting them on their walls. They're hanging them on their living room walls. And when they're not watching, television on them, they're screening art. They just have like art on them. So it's like the idea is that it can look like a painting when it's not a television set. It's very futuristic. Like, I guess what we would have considered back in the day as futuristic. But I don't know, we still like it now, so I mean, it's very present. But yeah, before though these flat television sets, your family would just get these gigantic console television sets, and they were so big, and they took up so much of the living room that they really did have to tie the living room together. You couldn't just get a console television set and just put it in your living room and just expect it to go unnoticed when it wasn't being watched. So the solution to this by a lot of manufacturers was just to make it look like a piece of furniture, okay, when it wasn't in use. And so the one that my parents had, and the one that was very prototypical of the one that a lot of American families had, that I think graced a lot of American living rooms, was the woodgrain television, where the actual device itself was surrounded in wood, and the top of it was kind of considered to be like a shelf where you could put like pictures of your family on it and things like that. And then the bottom of it, below the device, were drawers. And I don't know about you, but my family, the television set that we had, I think it was an RCA. I can't be sure. I kind of looked it up today to just see if I could find the original model and Google it for my memory, but I couldn't do it. But I think it was an RCA. And yeah, it had these two faux drawers below the device. So they didn't act as drawers, but they looked like drawers, right? It's like their form was drawers, but their function was just to be a facade. And so we had this television set. I remember like just very clearly one of my earliest memories in life is probably watching like the Dukes of Hazzard on it, or the movie Annie. I remember my older sister Melissa loved the movie Annie, and I think it was probably the first VHS cassette that my family owned, and they were always playing it for her, this movie Annie, way back in 1984, 85. And I know. To some of you listening to this seems like very recent history, but I'm turned 40 last year, and this to me is like the very early edges of my life, the very earliest sketches on my memory plane. And so I remember this very well, just having this console television. It was a fixture of 3 houses that I lived in. The one in Anniston, my first house, the one in Moody, Alabama, where I moved when I was about 4 or 5 years old, and then finally the one that my parents live in now, out across from Spain Park High School. And so I remember this so clearly, and just being all the way up until 18, 19 years old, getting my first DVD player and just plugging that in. It just really did feel like this console television set had bridged, decades of advances in technology. It was always there to meet the new technology, right? And then eventually my parents got rid of it, and the only reason they probably would have hung on to it for about 2 or 3 more years. The only reason they got rid of it is because I was moving into a new apartment, and a television set was just one of those things that I didn't want to spring for. So I asked them, wouldn't it be nice if I could take this TV off your hands, and you guys just go get a new television set. They got these new TVs that are coming out now. They're like gray. They've got speakers on the side. They only weigh about 100 pounds. So why don't y'all get one of those at Best Buy, and I can take this old console television with me. And they agreed to it. So they gave me this console television set. I had to bribe my friend Joel with dinner at Milo's. He came over with his truck, his pickup truck, one weekend when he was home from being at college at the University of Alabama, and he helped me take this thing down to my apartment. I lived on the 2nd floor, and we had to pick this thing up. Have I even talked about how much this weighs? So you can imagine how much it weighs. It's about 300 pounds. It's very, very heavy stuff. It really is. It would be so much easier just to move a couch or something. We pick this thing up and move it up 2 flights of stairs, and then suddenly it's in my apartment, and it's like a floor model television. It's on the floor. And the first thing I watch in my apartment on this television set that I've had since my parents have had since before I was born was, I think, Andy Richter Controls the Universe. This sitcom that Andy Richter starred in, I think, for like 1 season after he decided to leave his cash cow, Conan O'Brien, as the sidekick. And so yeah, there it was in my in my first apartment. This thing that sat on the floor. Getting a PlayStation 2 and plugging the PlayStation 2 into it. I had to get a hub for coax cables for the DVD player and the PlayStation 2, and pretty soon it was just like a rainforest of cables behind this television set. And yeah, just playing Grand Theft Auto 3 on that thing. It was wild. So yeah, this show the other night that I'm watching on HBO, the show's called Love and Death, by the way. It's a I'll talk about it in a minute. It's a show that takes place in the 1980s. Is all the information you need to know about it right now. This guy is watching news about himself on this console television. Just reminded me of this. I haven't, even though I've seen a million shows since then, and a million movies that have been set in the past or have even been filmed in the past with these console television sets. Somehow this just triggered a memory in my mind that I haven't thought about in years, and also just a recollection, okay, or a realization, I should call it. My parents had this thing for, all in all, 23 years. Let's say they got it as early as 1981, and then they gave it to me in 2003 when I moved into my first apartment. And then I had it for like 2 years after that. So like just imagine this, that they have this thing for 23 or 24 years. And it's perfectly good the whole time. The only reason I eventually get rid of it is because I get a job, I make a little bit of my own money, and I go out and buy my own television set. And I think I give this thing to like Goodwill or the Hannah Home or something like that. But it's perfectly good for all these years, almost a quarter century. It runs perfectly fine. It may still be out there today running perfectly fine as we live and speak. Who knows? But yeah, this television set wearing perfectly fine. And the funny thing is, I was also thinking about how many televisions I've had since I got rid of that thing. How many televisions have my parents had? That used to be the only television set we had in our entire house. And now my parents have a television in almost every single room of their house, right? They have it in the den, in the day room. They have it in all 4 bedrooms. Televisions everywhere. And my dad probably isn't through buying new television sets. So how does that make sense? I mean, what does that say about the world that we've become? That this fixture of the home, this hearth of the home is what they used to call it, right? The television, the hearth of the home, the thing where the everybody always gathered. Ubiquitous in every household across America is everybody has one, and then suddenly everybody's buying, like they get rid of the one that they've always had that works perfectly, and then they start buying a million new ones. I don't know what that says. Yeah, it's getting pretty close to sunset right now, and predictably, this place is getting kind of crowded. I may not be able to do the whole show here, but I'll hang out for a little bit longer. And the hounds are getting restless a little bit. And there's a couple of girls in the car right next to me who are laughing at me. They're laughing about something, but they're looking at me at the same time. I'm not totally narcissistic in saying that it's I'm the object of their ridicule, but most likely I am. That's okay. I don't care. I'm podcasting right here, doing something important. Because of me, this sunset tonight will be immortalized in the annals of podcast history. Right? So, yeah, this is one of those places that I guess in movies or in local lore would probably be called something like Lover's Leap or the Point. I don't know if kids have Lover's Leaps anymore. I don't know. But yeah, it's just these places where kids go where they can be alone and get a little bit of extra biology credit. If you know what I mean, and I think you do. But yeah, this is one of those places that would be classified as that. Many a time I've been coming home late at night from Jason's, and I've passed this place about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. There's very often you're almost assured to get a car with some fogged up windows there. Maybe some footprints on the window glass. I don't know, something like that. But how's it going? I'll get out of here so you guys can actually pull up and enjoy it. No. Okay, it's fine. No, it's okay.
And then we'll leave and it'll be so much better for
No,
you.
it's all right.
Them and said, look.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Are you doing a podcast?
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
cool.
I'm so sorry. Yeah,
That's
he just
okay.
smacked me.
What are you doing it about?
Scholar.
Cereal.
Cereal?
What do you mean
Yeah.
cereals?
Mm-hmm.
We need
Like breakfast
we need
cereal?
further explanation.
Yeah.
Like Cinnamon Toast Crunch?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that your dog?
Yeah.
Like you're doing
Both of them?
I'm about to take them out of here actually because they're getting a little bit anxious.
Sorry, we didn't.
It's okay. No, enjoy. I don't know why I lied to that nice family and told them my podcast was about cereal. Well, that's how they interpreted it. They thought my podcast was about cereal. I guess what I meant is that my podcast is cereal. That big show that kind of made podcasting come back from out of the basement about 12 or 13 years ago. And now when you talk to people about podcasts, they're like, oh, you mean like Serial? At least that's been my experience anyway. Whenever I tell people that I do a podcast, they're usually like, oh, you mean like Serial? So I don't know. I guess that's what I was hoping to do by lying to that family last night and telling them that I was with Serial, because maybe then they'd understand it and I would look like a little bit less weird. You know, I don't know, but it did. They didn't know what it was. They didn't know what Serial was. They thought my podcast was about Cinnamon Toast Crunch or whatever. And oddly enough, that's probably, I don't think I've ever really talked about breakfast cereals that much, but I do talk about pop artifacts, like breakfast cereal, and don't necessarily do true crime like Serial, the show. But yeah, I was just, I guess, trying to plant the seed in their mind that I was a spy for National Public Radio. And that's why I was there at the Tip Top Grill. But yeah, it's the next night now. And I couldn't record anymore after that family came along. I was exposed. Too many people were looking at me, and too many people were walking around trying to get, because I guess I was in prime position for the pictures. That's what that family asked me to do. They asked me to take their picture, and then I talked to them for a little bit, and then when they were finished, another group of people came along and wanted to take a picture in the same exact spot. So I couldn't really sit there and continue to do my show. So at the Tip Top Grill, but that's okay. It was a nice experience. It honestly was. You know, I just sat there and kind of looked out over the horizon at the Jones Valley, just watching the sunset with these perfect strangers. We talked about thunder shirts for our respective dogs, as my Bassets continued to kind of make a fuss and howl. And yeah, like I said, I took their picture, and several times I have serious anxiety about taking other people's pictures. And I don't think I did a good job, you know, because I got that look from them when I took like 5 or 6 pictures. I handed the camera back to them, and they looked at it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's nice, thank you." I was pretty sure that I did not do a good job, but it's okay. They were very polite about it, nice, and it really was a sign of the times that they see somebody looking out at the sun going down, talking into a recorder, and they just automatically know that I'm doing a podcast. I don't think that would have been the case maybe 5 or 6 years ago. So yeah, but it was getting pretty close to time anyway. Right when I wrapped up with that family, I got a text from my friend Jason. He said that everybody was getting together, and Alex had ordered some pizzas. So yeah, I had to go on over there and hang out with everybody, and I'm glad I did. Just decided to put up podcasting for the night and just have a good time with my friends. Yeah, it was like just the kind of like quintessential Friday night over at Jason's. I've known this guy for 20 years or so. We met when we were in college, and we were both writing for a sketch comedy group. And Jason's sister, along with his brother-in-law, had started up the comedy troupe, so that's how he got involved in it. And then I got involved because I went to like an open call audition just as a writer. I didn't want to act or anything like that, but I got on with it, and it was one of those things that really did end up changing my life. And you know, because 20 years later, here I am hanging out with everybody that was over there last night. I met through this sketch comedy troupe. With the exception of Alex. Alex was one of those guys that was kind of in the UAB theater department where we were both in college, enrolled in classes. So, yeah, but just knowing all these guys, and I don't get to see them very often. I get to see Alex more than Adam, because as I said last night, Adam is in Los Angeles, as is Jason's sister Shannon, who is also in town. And you know, so I haven't seen them in a year or so. They usually come into town, every year around this time during the summer. Alex lives in town, but I just never get to see him because he's very busy with his job. He works from home, and as I understand it, he edits movie trailers. He was talking to me last night about editing movie trailers, and that's what he's been doing for a very long time, and so likes to give me some like insider information about the movie biz. He never violates his non-disclosure agreements. I want to stress that very well. But yeah, like when Indiana Jones came out a couple of weeks ago, he mysteriously disappeared to Los Angeles during that movie's release, and he was coming back on a plane. Alex was, and he texted me and he said, "Man, thanks for making podcasts again. I've really been enjoying your show on my flight home." And I texted him back, and I'm like, "Yeah, that's great. So listen, now that the movie's out, tell me what you did on Indiana Jones." Because I had this feeling that he was holding out on me. He was like, because obviously that was a big movie, and a lot of secrets were kept about it. And he said, no, I really wanted to work on the movie, but my company just had too many things going on, and we all wanted to have weekends off, because I presume that working on a big summer tentpole movie like Indiana Jones would probably take up a lot of time for whatever trailer house was working on it and all that. So yeah, but yeah, like I just always assume that Alex is working on every movie that I see now, a trailer for. So. And I think I called him the Forrest Gump of Hollywood, because he just seems to be like always there in the background doing something. It's like you'll be talking about movies with him, and he'll just be like, "Yeah, I did this on that," and right. Not as a brag. Alex is honestly, I know he's listening to this right now. As I said, Alex and Adam are two of the biggest listeners that I have of the Midnight Citizen, going all the way back to when I started the show. And but I'm not just saying that because I know he's probably listening right now. He really is one of the most humble human beings I've ever met. And every time I see him, he's always asking me like everything that's going on in my life. And I end up boring him with that. So yeah, it's just Siobhan and Alex brought their kid over, and Shannon had her two kids over, and they're all around the same age. So they were in one room playing like video games. I think they were playing Mario Kart, and then we were on the deck, kind of watching movies and drinking and all that. It just was that kind of like quintessential Friday night that you don't get too much of. And yeah, I just remember meeting all these guys 20 years ago, and there was a kind of pensive, I don't know, there was a kind of not shyness that we had around each other, but I don't know, when you meet people and you're all around the same age and you're all in college and you haven't quite figured out life yet, you can't always be honest with each other. And so I think that's what your 30s are like. You spend a lot of your 30s weeding out a lot of friendships that really are just surface relationships that don't really mean much. And then by the time if you're lucky, I think when you're in your late 30s and early 40s, you kind of just have it figured out. It's like, these are the people that I can sit down with and not see them in a very long time. And as soon as we sit down with each other, we immediately pick up where we left off. And that's what it was like last night. I mean, shit, we were there until about 2 o'clock in the morning or so. And, I only left because I had to come home and let the dogs out, because as I said, Jessica's out of town, and I just didn't want the dogs to be alone, or go too long without, going out, because as I said, I brought them with me, and yeah, I definitely overdid it a little bit last night, is what I'm trying to say. Just, when listen, I don't want to sound like Jeff Foxworthy here, but if you're married, you know what it's like. When your wife goes out of town, you kind of lose a lot of the instincts that you've honed over years of cohabitation. You don't brush your teeth on time, for instance. You don't eat as well as you usually do. You definitely don't go to bed at a normal hour. So yeah, like last night I got home, it was like 2:30 in the morning, and I realized, man, I didn't really have much to eat last night, and I just threw like a can of black beans on the stove like a freaking college student, and if I had had ramen, I didn't have any ramen noodles. And yeah, I put on a movie. I think I put on like Beverly Hills Cop 3. This is a movie that I would never watch if my wife were around. It's too like, why? It's not a good movie. Even as far as Beverly Hills Cop movies go, that's not a great film series, and that's definitely the worst of those movies. But I just wanted to see, that's the one where Axel Foley traces like a counterfeit killer. A killer who counterfeits money chases him to like an amusement park or something. And I just wanted to see that scene where Axel Foley commandeers this ride, one of those, like spider rides it's like a Ferris wheel, but it's got like multiple tentacles of cars on it. And there's a scene where he goes up and he's trying to like run from the killers, which doesn't make much sense. If you're running from somebody who's trying to kill you, why would you get into a small little contraption that you have no control over? It doesn't make any sense. But what makes that scene so memorable is that the guy that he steals it from is George Lucas, in a very, very random cameo. George Lucas. Yes, I just wanted to see that. So yeah, I ended up, I think, falling asleep watching Beverly Hills Cop 3. I fell asleep on the couch, too. I was like, I don't want to go to bed. I can keep this night going forever. So, ended up passing out. And woke up sometime around 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning, and the movie Mission Impossible was playing. I guess you put a movie on streaming, and it just kind of cycles through a bunch of random movies, I guess. So... yeah. So yeah, what was I talking about last night? I was talking about console television sets, and rest your nerves, I'm not going to continue talking about. I think I talked it out last night. I think you'll agree with me. What I did want to talk about, though, is the whole reason that I was thinking about console TVs is because, as I said, I was watching a show on HBO called Love and Death. And this is a show that I think came out earlier this summer with Jesse Plemons and Elizabeth Olsen, who is related to the Olsen twins from what's that show? Full House. I didn't know that they had a sister. I think she's younger than them, actually. But yeah, those Olsen twins are like billionaires because they made like a bunch of really, goofy movies in the 90s, but I think they also had like a clothesline that they sold at Walmart or something like that. But yeah. But Elizabeth Olsen's in it. And Jesse Plemons, who for years I didn't know the guy's name. I just was like, that actor who looks like Matt Damon. But he's a good actor. I like Jesse Plemons. He's going to be in the new Martin Scorsese movie, Killers of the Flower Moon. Yeah, he's been in just a whole bunch of stuff over the last few years. I think the first time I saw him was in Breaking Bad. He played that like maniac. What was his name? Todd. The guy who, like, on the first episode that he's on, I think, kills a kid because he's a witness to a crime. He just like pulls out a gun and just shoots the kid and then like steals the kid's tarantula. Yeah. Anyway, I digress. But yeah. Love and Death is a show that takes place in the 1980s with a bunch of console televisions. And I wouldn't have watched the show, but it was based on this book that I did talk about that I just read through a second time. Well, I listened to the audiobook of it called Evidence of Love, and I've got the book here. I think this book came out in like 1982. I'm missing the title page. The whole book just has fallen apart on me. This is the mass market paperback that I found in a used bookstore in Trenton, Georgia a few years ago. And yeah, I just devoured the book. I got it and just read it through in one weekend. And yeah, the title is incredibly pulpy, just like this cartoon, Drew Struzan, kind of cartoon hand, the hand of a woman with like a diamond ring on it. I guess that's a wedding ring, and she's holding an axe. And the title just says, Evidence of Love, the powerful true story, as gripping as Fatal Vision. I guess Fatal Vision's maybe another book or something like that, but yeah, but Evidence of Love is this book that was written by John Bloom and Jim Atkinson, these two reporters from the Dallas Times-Herald in the 1980s. I came across the book, of course, because, as I said last week, John Bloom is the drive-in film critic Joe Bob Briggs, and that's one of the reasons why I went over to Jason's last night, is because Joe Bob Briggs is a horror movie host who was on TNT all the time in the 1990s, and then he kind of retired the character for a very long time, and finally came back a few years ago and started doing Joe Bob Briggs again, and got this job on television hosting horror movies on Friday nights. And so that's why we were watching it last night. We were watching Joe Bob Briggs, and it was just so weird to see this guy who's, kind of this like shit-kicking redneck Texas cowboy who likes drive-in films. It's a persona that John Bloom created in the 1980s because he realized that no industry cranks out more movies per annum than the drive-in film industry. Just these B movies that come out and fill the drive-in screens of nationwide. And he just wanted to review some of these because the serious film critics wouldn't touch this stuff. So that's why he created the Joe Bob Briggs character. And yeah, but Evidence of Love, though, is it proves that he is a very good writer. He's a very good investigative writer, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to pick up the book, because I've only read any writing that John Bloom has done as the Joe Bob Briggs character. But it turns out to be a really good book. But yeah, Evidence of Love and the show that was adapted from it, Love and Death, is about this woman named Candy Montgomery, who has an affair with a friend of hers from church husband. The friend is named Betty Gore, and her husband is named Alan. And the affair kind of goes on for a little bit, and then it breaks up because they both decide to just concentrate on their own marriages. They go to this weekend marriage counseling session called Marriage Encounter, and they both have revelations that they want to kind of continue to keep their marriages going. So they quit the affair mutually, and they both go back to their lives, and their wives and their husbands respectively. And the only big problem with it is that neither one of them tells their spouses about the affair. And so Betty Gore ends up not finding actual proof, but suspecting that something is going on between her husband and Candace Montgomery. And one day Candace Montgomery goes over to Betty Gore's house to pick up some swim trunks for her daughter. And Betty Gore confronts Candace about the affair. Candace admits that it happened, but it's over now. Betty Gore goes and gets an axe, and then from there we don't really know exactly what happened. We know that what the jury believes happened. So what the jury believes happened is that Candace Montgomery ended up killing Betty Gore in self-defense with an axe. So Betty Gore comes at Candace Montgomery, a struggle ensues with the axe between them, and then Candace takes the axe and whacks Betty Gore. Just in self-defense. And that's a totally believable story, but the issue that I have I have an issue with this is the fact that she not only kills Betty Gore, but she overkills her. She strikes her 41 times with an axe. You know that song about Lizzie Borden, right? Lizzie Borden had an axe, gave her father 40 whacks. looked and saw what she had done, gave her mother 41, right? You know that song? It's funny because, I mean, it's not funny. You know, axe murder isn't funny, but I don't mean to imply that it is. But it is very ironic, though, right? That I think in real life, Lizzie Borden didn't actually, you know, kill her mother and father with 41 axe blows. I think it was like a lot less. And actually, I don't think it was Lizzie Borden was ever actually found guilty of the crime, right? I may be wrong about that. I can't remember. But yeah, a coroner determines that Betty Gore has 41 blows by an axe all over her. Defensive wounds, basically, you know, turning the inside, her head inside out is just really a brutal crime. And yeah, and so that's I have a difficult time believing that Candace Montgomery did all this in self-defense. It seemed like she probably maybe got the first blow in self-defense, and then she just went nuts, right? So I won't spoil all of it for you, obviously, but what seems to have happened is that Candy Montgomery just snapped. And what fascinates me about this book and about this case, and they go into this quite a lot in the HBO miniseries, is that this is one of those cases where hypnotism was a piece of evidence. So Candy Montgomery goes to a hypnotist who is hired by her lawyer, and the hypnotist is able to put her under and actually prove that Candace Montgomery is truly hypnotized and not just faking it. So I don't know if you've ever allowed yourself to be hypnotized before, like I have, but I wasn't able to be hypnotized, and I know that some people just can't be hypnotized. I don't know if I'm one of them. I think maybe under the right circumstances I can actually be hypnotized. Actually, I think that I can, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. But the problem is that once somebody told me that they're going to hypnotize me, just the power of suggestion came to the front of my brain, and I was unable to go into a trance. But nevertheless, Candace Montgomery was put under hypnotism and asked to kind of recount the whole crime from the moment that she entered Betty Gore's house. And what ends up happening is that the whole reason that the hypnotist says that Candace snapped is because Betty Gore at 1 minute, they're kind of, Betty Gore is seeming to just lose it and go within herself. This is a woman who struggles from depression, who always believes that her husband is not interested in her, which, you know, turns out she was right because, you know, he had an affair on her. But Betty Gore just is deeply, deeply dissatisfied with herself and very jealous of Candace Montgomery, who is this kind of the model, perky, you know, early 1980s housewife, you know, had 2 kids, but it doesn't show. Basically, the complete opposite of Betty Gore. Okay, and so Betty Gore just loses it in the middle of this match. And what Candace Montgomery is able to reveal to the hypnotist is that at one point, Betty Gore is just kind of standing between them with the axe, and she just says to Candace Montgomery, as Candace Montgomery is fighting for her life, she just says to her, "Shh." And, you know, that's the name of one of the chapters in the book that features this scene of hypnotism, is that Candace Montgomery is able to recall through hypnotism, true hypnotism, actually proving, because what they do to prove that she's actually hypnotized is they take a safety pin and they stab her skin with it and she doesn't feel pain. So, anyway, but yeah, according to Candace Montgomery, under hypnotism, Betty Gore says shh to her. And so why does that matter so much? Well, because Candace Montgomery is able to summon a memory from when she was 4 years old, where Candace Montgomery was deeply injured. She had to go in for surgery, and her mother kept on saying to her, "Shh, okay." So what happens is that all these years later, when Candace Montgomery is in the fight for her life against this woman who will most definitely kill her with an axe, the woman says the same thing to her, and Candy Montgomery just cannot deal with it. And so she goes from striking Betty Gore one time, in a blow that killed her, to just overkill, and 40 more times striking her with an axe. So, just a wild story. And when they finally get to the scene of murder in the final episode of the show, it's very brutal. It's one of the most brutal things I've ever seen on HBO, which is, I guess, probably saying a lot, right? So, yeah, it interests, I remember this whole talk of hypnotism in the book because it's something that I've always been fascinated in, going back and forth about whether or not I really believe that it's possible to be hypnotized. And I did used to, when I was a teacher, one of my colleagues was a certified hypnotist, and every year, to raise money for the school, he would actually have a show where people would come in and he would invite them up on stage, students, parents, teachers alike, and get on stage and actually put them under and hypnotize them. And I never volunteered for this because I just didn't want to get up there, and I was absolutely sure I wasn't going to be able to be hypnotized. And even if I was going to be able to be hypnotized, I'm a professional. I don't be walking around the halls for the rest of the school year, having kids yell out some phrase that's been implanted in my brain that's going to cause me to do something stupid where I could lose my job. So I didn't want to do that. I was afraid, but also very skeptical. But he would always get, every single year, the people who would go up on stage who would line up to be hypnotized were all able to be hypnotized, which just didn't statistically make sense to me. Because it's something like 9 in 10 people can be hypnotized, and there's 12 people up on the stage. One of those people has got to be lying, right? So, and I didn't know if they were doing it just for the purposes of entertainment or whatever, but nevertheless, I was pretty floored every year, because he would always get somebody to, he would always he would have a belt with him or a piece of string, and he would tell everybody under hypnotism that, this is a snake. And he would always bring everybody out of that except for one person who he would keep under. And for the rest of the show, he would kept on, going back to the belt and kind of like, pushing it in their direction, and they would freak out a little bit, thinking that belt was a snake. So I'm always really interested in, and I don't know. I don't think I can be hypnotized, because I don't think I could ever get to a point, because I think, again, if you're an introvert and you're very self-conscious around people, right? Like even last night when I was hanging around with all my friends, these are great people I've known for years, but I'm still very self-conscious of the things that I'm saying, how I'm behaving around them. I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable, and I don't want to be driving home afterwards and just being like, man, I wonder if I should have said that. So I think for people like that, who are always very much present in their bodies and in their minds, I think it would be very difficult for them to be hypnotized, and that's very much me. Some people can just at parties, for instance, just let themselves go and just, say things with impunity and not really care about the consequences, or be so confident in themselves that they don't have to worry about it. So, but I don't think I'm like that. The most convincing thing that he's ever said to me, the reason for how hypnotism works, is you think about when you're in your car and you're driving along a route that you go along every single day. Your mind is very often not conscious of every single moment in that car. That stop signs are coming. That there's a pretty good chance that a stoplight is going to be red, so you kind of prepare to brake for it. You're aware enough to meet emergencies when they come up, like if somebody breaks really quickly in front of you. But more or less, you can kind of go on autopilot if you're making like your daily commute to work, for instance. And when you get to work or when you get to your destination, you kind of suddenly snap out of it. And suddenly your day is unlike the previous day. But so that's almost like a form of hypnotism, and like that makes sense to me. If a hypnotist can actually get you to that state where your body is still awake, but your mind is kind of coasting, I think that they can, if they start at that point, they can probably convince you that a belt is a snake, for instance. So, and one of the things that I thought was really brilliant about the Love and Death show that they did constantly is that Candace Montgomery is always driving. You know, she's a young mother in the late 1970s, early 1980s. And so she's always on her way to and from things, you know, picking up the kids, dropping off the kids, going to church, you know, going to visit her husband, Pat, at the office, things like that. She's always doing errands. And the show does a lot of being with her inside of her car while she drives along on errands, and does what we all do when we're in our cars alone. She sings songs, and she just kind of slips into this moment where the worst thing that can happen to her, which is her killing one of her best friends, she gets in a car and she just kind of slips into singing a song. And that in a way is a kind of hypnotism. When we're in our cars, we kind of slip ourselves into this other realm where the outside world doesn't exist, and we can kind of let ourselves go and be who we are, and sing a song, and like pretty soon, like 3 minutes goes by, and all we remember is the song that we just heard, and nothing else around us. None of the trees, none of the, you know, like a person could pull up next to us at a stoplight dressed as a clown. We wouldn't notice them. And so I think that, you know, this show, a lot of times it just seems like they're trying to insert pop music into the show, you know, because it's like the early 1980s, which was a great time for music. And they just kind of like to show, you know, this Elizabeth Olsen playing this housewife, singing songs like Turn the Beat Around or Queen of Hearts by Juice Newton. And it's kind of funny and humorous, but I think they're also setting you up to just understand that this woman is totally capable of being hypnotized and being out of body and not being aware of her surroundings. So I think that's the whole point of that, right? So, yeah. That song Queen of Hearts by Juice Newton. That's a great song. I love that song. What is it, like Midnight? It starts with the lyric Midnight. I love songs that have midnight in them because I'm the Midnight Citizen. It's like midnight and I'm a-waiting on the 12:05. So she's like in a train station waiting for, I guess because she probably just like fooled around on somebody's with somebody's husband or something. So it's kind of apropos of the story, right? So, yeah. But yeah, Joe Bob Briggs, it's funny, you know, wrote this book in the 1980s called Evidence of Love. And they made it into a movie in the early 90s with Barbara Hershey and Brian Dennehy playing her lawyer. And radio silence for a while, and then like last year they made the show Candy on Hulu, starring Jessica Biel as Candy. So it was the same exact series. Just, but I think that series on Hulu was actually adapted from this book, whereas the one on HBO was actually adapted from a series of articles that were written about the case by the same people who wrote the book. So, yeah, it's very odd when that happens. The only other time I know that happening where two competing streaming networks release a a show about the same thing is like, remember that Fire Festival documentary? Like Netflix came out with one and then Hulu came out with one. So, yeah. But I think Joe Bob Briggs was actually an executive producer on the Hulu series with Jessica Biel, which I haven't watched. So, I may watch it. I don't know. I'm kind of done right now. Like I read the book again, and then I watched the show. So I think I'm kind of done with Candace Montgomery for a while. I think. Yeah, I think I am. So. Yeah, the pop music that Candace Montgomery listens to is a lot of fun. It's just it's always fun to hear like period music. Queen of Hearts is a song that I haven't heard on a show in a very long time. There was one moment on that show that really did take me by surprise of like, why are you using this song? It doesn't make any sense. And there's a scene that takes place at the courthouse right before the verdict is read on Candace Montgomery, whether or not she's going to jail or not. And the song Maggie May by Rod Stewart plays. That makes like no sense at all. Why would you use that song? Like nobody's listening to it on the radio. I don't even think Maggie May, that's like a song from the early 70s, not the 80s. It's wild. That's a song like, wake up, Maggie, think I've got something to say to you, right? It's like, I think maybe HBO had the rights to that song. Maybe they were about to, it was about to run out or something, and they're just like, we gotta put Maggie May in something. Well, we got this show Love and Death about this woman. Okay, put it in there. Fine. Okay, good. So. I'll say one more thing about Love and Death, and this whole case altogether, really, is that when the axe murder was committed, it was committed in this small town in Texas that hadn't had a violent crime like that in years. And they initially thought that it was the work of cultists, right? Because why not? This is the 1980s. There's a satanic panic going on. I always remember even when I was growing up in the late 80s, my mom always had us pull in all of our cats on Halloween night because she didn't want them to get abducted by a Satanist. Yeah, it's a true story. But yeah, the police, their only lead to go on about who committed the axe murder of Betty Gore was they found a newspaper advertisement for the movie The Shining, which of course has Jack Nicholson walking through the Overlook Hotel with an axe, trying to kill his family. And that movie came out the very day that Betty Gore was killed. That's what's so weird. There's something about that time period. About the murder took place on Friday, June 13th, 1980. Which is just a big seminal day in film history, because you have The Shining comes out, the movie Friday the 13th, very first Friday the 13th, comes out that day, and which also has an axe in it, an axe murder. I think Mrs. Voorhees actually gets decapitated by an axe at the end of that movie. And then also the biggest thing, and this was actually part of Candace Montgomery's alibi. How could I have committed a murder and then taken my family to see The Empire Strikes Back that night? So yeah, that was the same day that The Empire Strikes Back came out, the sequel to Star Wars. And yeah, indeed, in the book, there's a big, long, extended sequence where Candace Montgomery is sitting in the theater watching The Empire Strikes Back, and she sees Han Solo take his sword and slice open the Tauntaun in order to put Luke Skywalker in there and get him some heat. And all she's thinking about the whole time is just how she hacked up her best friend. So it reminds her of that. So I'm not laughing at that. Anyway, yeah, but it's so strange. That movie, that new Indiana Jones movie that came out a few weeks ago. kind of talks a lot about how it's not the ability to time travel, but the Archimedes dial points us to certain fissures in time and space that allow the possibility of time travel. It just tells us where they are. And I think that June 13th, 1980 may have been one of these fissures where just too many synchronicities happened. You've got 3 really big movies that we still watch and talk about today. The Shining, Friday the 13th, and Empire Strikes Back all come out on the same day. And then you have this axe murder. So I don't know what else happened that day, but it was a pretty big day, I'll tell you what. Okay, so let's switch to whiskey. It's my first drink that I've had today. So, yeah, Jessica's coming back into town tomorrow, so I'm preparing for that. I'm trying to cut down. No, I've been good today. I've been fine. I've been out all day, really, is what I've been doing. I did go to the movies. This weekend, of course, the big news, I saw the double feature that everybody's talking about. Oppenheimer and Mission Impossible. Right. No. Oh, I got you there. Yeah, everybody's been talking about going to see Oppenheimer and Barbie. It's really wild because, yeah, I went to the movies today, and there are all these people dressed up as Barbie. Just a lot of hot pinks. These tiny little cowboy hats, I guess, that Barbie wears all the time. A lot of Barbie cosplaying. No Oppenheimer cosplaying. Nobody was wearing these Stetson hats, leather jackets, and pipes. I guess you can't really have a pipe indoors, but yeah, there was no Oppenheimer cosplay. But this is interesting, and I'm kind of going back and forth on what I want to think about this. I guess ultimately it's no big deal, but right now movie theaters are really big in the news. For a very long time, people weren't going to movies. I guess people saw Top Gun last year, but what's really made this is a very big summer blockbuster weekend, almost like the kind that you used to get back in the 90s with summer blockbusters, is that people are going to do this double feature of the movie Barbie and the movie Oppenheimer, about J. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atom bomb. And yeah, I guess the joke is the two movies can't be any more different. Like, one is bright and explosive with color and cheeky, and the other is Barbie, right? No. Yeah. Oppenheimer is a 3-hour-long epic about a scientist, and Barbie is Barbie. So I decided to go see Oppenheimer because I didn't realize it was an R-rated movie, and very rarely, I don't go to the movies just for, I'm not like a teenager. I don't go to movies because they're rated R, but it is fascinating, though, that during the summer, a movie studio would actually have the guts to release a 3-hour R-rated epic about a scientist. It is very interesting. So, and I didn't realize the movie was R-rated until I bought my movie ticket. I thought R was like the theater number or something like that. But I was surprised. I was like, okay, I guess. I mean, it's about the atom bomb. That's a pretty dark subject. So I guess we'll probably see like some melted faces and things like that. But it turns out, no, it's rated R for some occasional language, and there is some nudity in it. So if you're into that kind of thing, that's what you want to see in an R-rated movie. But yeah, but I saw this movie Oppenheimer actually yesterday. I was going to go today, but my dad decided he wanted to go see Mission Impossible. And this is Mission Impossible is like, we've seen these movies. I think I've seen every one of the Mission Impossible movies with my dad in the movie theater. So that's just kind of been our thing going back to the 90s. And yeah, I just I didn't think that my dad would really enjoy Oppenheimer, even though he obviously lived during World War II. It was because of World War II that allowed my grandfather, his father, to come home. There's something about this film director, the guy who made the movie, named Christopher Nolan, that has a funny way of making interesting stories about history into just bland reproductions of the past. I do not like Christopher Nolan that much at all. I think he's it really is like just eating Triscuits watching this guy make movies. I liked Memento. I thought Memento, the movie that he made back in the early 2000s, was a really cool movie. It was just a very simple crime thriller told in reverse order. So the movie opens up with the commission of a crime, and then it kind of goes backward in time to show how that crime was, I guess, everything leading up to the crime. And he of course made a name for himself directing the Batman movies. I enjoyed the first two of those Batman movies. I'm not a big comic book guy, but I liked the first two Batman movies. The third one was pretty, it was boring. And then every movie he's made since then, I think he made Inception. He did like Interstellar, that 3-hour-long space opera that thought it was 2001 with Matthew McConaughey. Just every movie he's made has just not been worthy of really seeing twice. I just think they're incredibly boring movies, and they're long, which is even worse. It would be one thing if you were boring and you were like 90 minutes long, but this guy just decides to just swing for the fences with every one of his movies, and Oppenheimer is like no exception. I'm very interested in the Oppenheimer story. I mean, it's an absolutely fascinating story. I've never been very comfortable with this idea that in 1945 the United States made the conscious decision to just kill, I think initially 60,000 Japanese civilians. And then in the weeks and months and years that followed, I think the death toll rose to well over 100,000 people. We just decided to do that. And it's like, I understand that we had a war going. And if we didn't do something drastic, like drop the atom bomb, the war would have kept on going for God knows how long, well after. Because, the big thing with the atom bomb is obviously that it's like the Battle of New Orleans. It was dropped essentially after the war was over. Hitler had killed himself. American Allied forces had invaded Berlin. It looked like it was, Germany, which had led the whole charge, was kind of out of it. Italy was on its way, and then Japan was holding fast, but how long could they honestly, come on, go up against the rest of the world? And I think that America was just in this position of like, we're just tired of losing people. Like, we know that we could beat Japan, but Japan is going to give us everything that they can, which would mean additional dead Americans. So we're just going to do this. And my concern, like my belief, is exactly expressed in the movie at one point by one of the skeptical characters, skeptical about the atom bomb. Why can't we just take film of it and show it to them and just say like, hey, listen, if you don't surrender, this is going to be you. And they just said like, no, Japan's never going to accept that. Okay, I mean, can we try it? Maybe. No. We're going to actually do it. We're going to drop 2 bombs, one on Hiroshima and one on Nagasaki. One's going to, I think they say like the first bomb that we drop is going to be to demonstrate that we have it. The second bomb we drop is going to be to demonstrate that we can do it over and over again until they give up. Okay. So they ended up doing that. So the whole movie is essentially Oppenheimer's life leading up to the Trinity test, when they finally enrich enough uranium to build the bomb, and then they drop it in the deserts at White Sands, New Mexico, which I always believed that White Sands, New Mexico, that was so uninhabited, such a desolate part of the United States with nobody really living there, that that was the best place to drop this bomb. But it turns out that Oppenheimer just really liked it out there. I think he owned a ranch out there, and he just really wanted to combine nuclear physics with New Mexico. So that's his whole motivation. It's a good thing he didn't like Chicago. He's like, if only I can combine physics and Chicago, that would be great. So, but no, it's white sand. So that's where they have the Trinity test. And yeah, once they demonstrate that they can do it, Oppenheimer, the army takes the bomb, and they just ship it on out in a truck. Like basically just like in a Piggly Wiggly truck, like there it goes, off to market. And so yeah, that's the whole premise of the thing, is that Oppenheimer is kind of like the American Prometheus. Prometheus stole fire from the gods and gave it to man, and to this day we're dealing with the consequences of that whole thing, because America was obviously the first to enrich uranium and build a bomb, and then now we're dealing with every single country on this planet with warlike intentions doing the same exact thing. And so yeah, and it's just the paradox. In order to have peace, you have to commit violence, and that parallels very much with Oppenheimer's interest in quantum mechanics. So all this is there. All of the bones, like a lot of the stuff I didn't even really know going in. I had the bare basic knowledge about Oppenheimer going into this movie, and I can say that I did learn some things. But that being said, the movie was just so bloated, and I think that's the biggest sin that a movie can have, is that it over bloats itself with scenes that just don't really matter that much to the plot, or don't even matter to characters. And I think Christopher Nolan's biggest problem as a screenwriter, because he writes all of his movies, is that every single one of his movies plays around with time. So the movie starts out in the present day and then goes back to Oppenheimer as a young idealistic physicist studying at Cambridge, and then it goes to him kind of traveling across America and going and getting an appointment at Berkeley, and then it goes back to when he was at Cambridge, and then it goes back to these hearings that he was in the 1950s. Then it goes forward to Robert Downey Jr.'s character, who plays a senator, the head of the Atomic Energy Committee or Commission, who was kind of Oppenheimer's champion until he wasn't. And so the whole movie, I'm telling you, for 3 hours goes back and forth between these 4 scenes. And it's just maddening. It's maddening because no single scene lasts longer than about 5 minutes. And you just never can feel like you get your foothold in any of the movie. It's just like this big 96 ounce steak that's just passing you by on a treadmill, and you're trying to bite onto it, but as soon as you kind of like get a little bit of a nibble, it just jerks away from you. That's what Oppenheimer is like. It's like eating a giant 96 ounce steak on a treadmill. If that makes any sense at all, right? It's a shame because the movie looks great. I went and saw it. One of the reasons I chose to see it is that they were showing it in 70 millimeter IMAX. And that I was like, I haven't seen a movie in 70 millimeter IMAX since they re-released 2001 a few years ago. And so I wanted to see it for this very reason. And yeah, the movie looks great. Fantastic to see it on film. With a big audience. There was a big audience there, and I don't think any of them were there to see the double feature with Barbie. Because the whole audience was really engaged the whole movie. They were turning around at the end of the movie and taking pictures of the 70 millimeter projector. So you could tell that they appreciated the experience. They weren't just there to, get a cute little post for their Instagram to show that they did the double feature. What are they calling it? Oppen Barbie or Barbieheimer or whatever. I don't know. So yeah, it was like that, and it was good to be seeing, like, and I hate to say it like this, but a big adult summer movie that's about something. I wanted to see that, and unfortunately the movie just is like, it's a dud. It's like a big bloated atomic bomb that you think is going to explode, and it's just a dud. But you may like it. Don't take my word for it. And it's like I was telling my friends last night when I was hanging out with them, because they had all seen Mission Impossible, and none of them had seen Oppenheimer yet, so we were opposites. And we were kind of exchanging information about the movie without trying to spoil it. And I told them, you guys may like Oppenheimer, and I'll say the same thing to you guys listening to this, which in that case is probably the same people who were on the porch last night with me, Adam and Alex. Whenever I review going to see a movie in a theater, I very rarely, it has to come with a caveat that I'm not just reviewing the movie that I saw, I'm also reviewing the entire experience of going to the movies. Because, and I don't think I'm the only one to say this, but when I was a kid, it's just going to the movie theater, that was like a sacred experience. It just was like, you were so respectful of it. It was just it wasn't always because the movies were good, it was just going to your local neighborhood multiplex. There was just a sense of just excitement and awe about it, and it's just, I don't feel that way anymore. And yeah, part of that could be because I am getting older, but what I really think the issue is, and I think you'll agree with me, is that just movie theaters, and you can't use COVID as an excuse. Long before COVID, movie theaters has just been going downhill. They're very depressing places, and it's like it's almost like take for instance the AMC chain theater that I went to yesterday and also today to see Mission Impossible. It just is a depressing looking place. There's like cords hanging out of the walls where they used to be hanging TVs. Showing movie trailers and all that. They took away all these TVs, and now there's just like cords hanging out of the walls, like snakes in Raiders of the Lost Ark or something. They had the big signs, the light up signs that would actually show you what movie is playing in what theater. Those are gone now. Now it's just a big blank wall that looks like it should be lit up, but it's not. And not only that, but like none of the lights are on in the lobby. So like the lobby is completely dark as well. The only thing that's lighting that lobby up is the light that's coming from the snack stand and the outside light. And it's like going to a Greyhound bus station or something. It's just a very depressing experience. On top of the fact that it's trashy. There's just trash all over the place. And the biggest issue also is that, this has been going on for a long time as well. You'll buy a movie ticket, you'll pay like $12, $15 for a movie, depending on what time of the day you go, and nobody is there to check that you actually bought that ticket. Today when I went and saw Mission Impossible, it was a little bit different. There was actually somebody who was scanning tickets. But you still could have walked past him and he never would have noticed. And yesterday, when I went to see Oppenheimer, there was nobody. I went and bought my ticket, and nobody checked to see that I had bought the ticket. I could have easily just walked right into the movie. So, and I know what you may be saying. It's like, well, Mike, that's what a decent human being does. And of course, a decent human being with ethics. But when you've got security that is that poor, it almost feels like they're exploiting your kindness. They're exploiting your ethical instincts. And it just feels like they're taking advantage of you at that point. They're charging you these ridiculous rates to see a movie that in like 2 months you can just watch on TV at home. And they're not even enforcing the tickets that you buy. And so that's kind of one reason why I'm getting a little bit annoyed about this whole Barbieheimer thing, is that people are saying like, oh my gosh, it's so exciting that something is going viral about the movie theater, that people are being compelled to go to the movie theater now. And it's so exciting because movies are coming back. And yeah, indeed, there's a lot of hype around that, built into the idea that movie theaters have been dying for a very long time, and they're kind of demonizing people that just want to stay home and watch movies, whereas like it's so great that there's still this one vestige of the community where people can come together and sit in the dark, perfect strangers who are brought together through the magic of motion pictures on the silver screen. You know, there's a lot of that romantic talk going on. But at the same time, like, movie theaters just aren't doing anything to make us want to come to their movie theaters. All they're basically doing is resting on their laurels, trying to make us all remember a time when we really enjoyed going to the movies. You know, something that's been going on since COVID, I don't know about you, but whenever you go to an AMC, before every movie, Nicole Kidman comes on the screen, and there's this long, like, 3-minute thing where she's just talking about how great it is to be in the movie theaters with people while she's sitting in an empty movie theater. You know, it's a big paradox. Doesn't make any sense. But Nicole Kidman's talking about that, and it just has this kind of condescending thing where it's like, listen, I did it. I came to the movies. Now stop talking about how great it is and just show me the damn movie. Right? So, yeah, I just feel like if we're going to talk about how amazing it is to go to the movies, then movie theaters should actually be doing something amazing to get us to come there. Otherwise, they do deserve to die. They're just not something that it's not something that should be allowed to keep living based on nostalgia alone and good feeling alone, right? And so, yeah, every time I go to the movies, for a long time now, it's just been a depressing experience. Everything that I used to enjoy about the movie is kind of being stripped down systematically. You know, just like all the way down to the point of just, you know, just the Coke being good, for instance. You know, you just like, there was nothing better than like movie popcorn along with a Coca-Cola. And now it's like, you know, they've got these gigantic vending machines that I think were invented by the guy who invented the Segway. You know, these digital Coke machines that are seemingly like magic. It's this one little kiosk that somehow has like 300 different flavors of soda in it. You know, you touch the screen, you touch the Coke icon, and you don't just get Coke, but you get every single Coke in the Coke family. And it's amazing. And you're like, how can they keep all of these syrups separated? And in both of my experiences over the past couple of days, seeing Oppenheimer yesterday and Mission Impossible today, they can't do it. The Coke, it was like the worst tasting Coke I've ever had. It didn't even taste like soda water. You know, somehow when the Coke is out, you just get soda water. I gotta stop complaining here. I gotta stop it, because I know this isn't what I do. This isn't the whiny citizen. This isn't the mid-wine citizen. Okay, listen, take some whiskey here. So I saw Mission Impossible today, and it was pretty good. It was pretty good. It's the weirdest thing, too, because, you know, Nicole Kidman comes on the movie screen before the movie's, you know, she sits in an empty theater and talks about how great it is to see movies with strangers. Yeah, this happened last year with Top Gun, and it happened this year also with Mission Impossible. Nicole Kidman leaves the screen, and then Tom Cruise comes on the screen to welcome you to see his movie. He's like, hey, enjoy Mission Impossible. We made it for you. And he just says that, and the movie starts. And this is very strange, right? Because Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise were an item, right? They were married for something like 10 years in the 90s. And they've been separated for so long. And I guess it does say something interesting about the movies that they can manage to resurrect that feeling of seeing, because in the 90s you just saw these two people together all the time. Their love was so great. They were such an idol of the press, and we all looked at them as like the perfect Hollywood couple. Just this young, fit, glamorous couple that were both actually good actors. They were such an important part of 90s culture that Stanley Kubrick devoted his last movie to them. Stanley Kubrick, who made 2 movies after The Shining. Stanley Kubrick made Eyes Wide Shut and devoted his entire last movie to Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, which I'm to understand actually ended up breaking up their marriage, but I don't know. So, yeah, Mission Impossible was pretty good. Yeah. Tell you what is funny is that I chose not to see the new Indiana Jones movie with my dad. That would have been a fun movie to see with my dad, but I decided not to just because the reviews early reviews weren't good, and then I went to see it at the drive-in a few weeks ago. I actually did a podcast while I was watching it, and it just was not grabbing my attention. And I've been telling people since that movie that I think one thing that really drove me crazy about it, and people laugh at me when I say this, I got really, I'm just getting really irritated with every time you have an old man in a movie. They just have to be tired of everything. They just have to, hate being old. They just are past it all. They have no enthusiasm for life, no lust for life. And I talked about all this a couple weeks ago when I went to see the movie at the drive-in. But that's one of the things that really did turn me off about Indiana Jones, because it's like, wouldn't the movie be interesting if Indiana Jones, now that he's able to just be in the classroom and teach and do research, and wouldn't it just be exciting to see him just have a zeal, like a lust for life, and actually enjoy the fact that he's older now and all these great adventures are behind him, and he can just kind of meditate on all that. And I just thought it would have been an interesting take on an old character, rather than giving us another old man who's just tired of everything. It's like a total cliche and a total drag. And, people kind of laugh at me for saying that, but I just think it would have been interesting. I mean, every time we see an old person in a movie, it's just not an interesting idea. It doesn't make the idea of aging interesting to people. Whereas I think aging is actually pretty cool, because as you get older, you learn from your mistakes. You're able to take things with a grain of salt that don't really matter. You're able to consider important things with a lot more meditation. Getting older just allows us all of these great luxuries. Like I was saying earlier, being able to sit with a group of trusted friends that we've known for years and not have to front for them, not have to put on some kind of an act, but actually be able to be honest with each other and have real interesting conversations. This is a very mature idea of depicting maturity, the maturation process. And very few films really do this, especially not big budget Hollywood Indiana Jones movies. And I wasn't expecting this from Indiana Jones. I was definitely expecting, because Harrison Ford has always played Indiana Jones as kind of being, over it, just being a little bit crusty, and that very classic scene in the first movie where the guy jumps out and kind of does this big sword and sorcery show, for him. and then Indiana Jones just whips out a gun and shoots him. And that's very much Indiana Jones in a nutshell. But I just think it would have been funny, just a different take on Indiana Jones, to see him spry and he's like, "Hey kids, how's it going? Today we're going to learn about Neolithism." You know, it just would have been funny. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But and yeah, the funny thing is today I'm talking to my dad before the movie starts, and I'm telling him my theory. And I'm telling him, you know, "Dad, I'm just so tired of seeing old people depicted as just crusty old, you know, joy killers in movies. I just, like, I want to see old people depicted as something to aspire to for younger people." And, you know, I just want to see old people look like they're having a good time. And my dad just turns to me and he says, "But they're not." I said, "Yeah, I know, Dad, but it's a movie. It's fantasy. Can't we just sell that fantasy to kids? Maybe if we, like, sell that fantasy enough time to kids, they'll actually grow up thinking that old age is something that they do want to aspire to. They actually don't want to live fast, die young, and leave a good-looking corpse. They actually want to, you know, grow old and mature." But my dad just wanted to see the old Indiana Jones, so it's fine, I guess, whatever. All right, thank you so much for joining me here tonight at the Midnight Citizen Show. It's been a pleasure. You can check me out at mikebooty.com/The Midnight Citizen. I'm also on Facebook and on YouTube. I've been recording this entire episode. You can see me up there at the Tip Top Grill or here in the back of my apartment building. Whatever. And I'm also on the Overnightscape Underground, onsug, onsug.com. So you can check me out over there. All right. Until next time, keep your eyes open.